Le Coucou is without a doubt one of the best and most popular French restaurants in New York City. The establishment has earned a Michelin Star and was even the recipient of the James Beard Award for the best new restaurant in America. With amazing looking food and decor, I just had to give Le Coucou a try.
Today I'm here along the Hudson River and it's a gray, gloomy, cloudy sort of day, but it's doing nothing to diminish my spirits because I still have a smile on my face from the dinner I had the other day, which ended up being one of the best meals I've had so far this year. I went to the Michelin Star, an incredibly popular French restaurant known as Le Coucou. I've been wanting to go there for a while now. I mean, the fact that it has a Michelin Star automatically put it on my radar, but the fact is, it's known as being a beautiful restaurant. I've seen so many photos of it, and it looks absolutely stunning. But of course, it's the food that ultimately brings me to a restaurant, and Le Coucou's food sounded incredible. So I made a reservation. Now, lunch reservations are pretty easy to get. You can probably make one for the next day at probably the time of your choice, but dinner reservations are another story. They're not necessarily hard to get, it's just difficult to get the time of one's choice, and you do kind of have to plan for it. I got my reservation about 2 weeks before I was actually able to dine at the restaurant. In a way, having to wait such a long time to dine at the restaurant, it kind of heightened my excitement. I felt like I was going to Le Coucou's website every day, checking out their menu, and just contemplating and fantasizing about the courses that I would enjoy. Thankfully, the wait was worth it, and I enjoyed one hell of a fine meal. This was my dinner at Le Coucou.
Just a block off of Canal Street between Chinatown and SoHo is Le Coucou. The restaurant opened in 2016 to immediate popularity and acclaim. Pete Wells, in his New York Times review, gave the restaurant a glowing 3 stars, and in the 2019 Michelin Guide, Le Coucou earned its Michelin Star, which it has maintained to this day. Perhaps the greatest honor the restaurant has received so far was back in 2017 when Le Coucou took home the James Beard Award as the best new restaurant in America. The establishment has recently been on my mind after reading Michael Azzolino's book, Your Table is Ready. It's a sort of memoir in which the author spent decades in the New York City restaurant industry and worked at Le Coucou during the establishment's initial years. Some of his stories about the restaurant were pretty amusing, from hard-to-please customers to restaurant critic protocol. In fact, he even discussed the pseudo-wealthy heiress Anna Zorkin, better known as Anna Delvey, who was a regular at the restaurant. At 5:45, I showed up for my reservation and was in awe of Le Coucou's interior. It's elegant, classy, but it also had a modern touch. I really loved the tall, lighted candles on the tables. I hardly ever see candles at that height in restaurants these days. They really contributed a sort of romantic type of atmosphere. In addition, I felt like I was seated at one of the restaurant's best tables as I had a perfect view of Le Coucou's spectacular open kitchen. One sort of unique aspect of the restaurant is that many of the chefs wear the classic tall white toques or chef's hats, which is sort of a reflection of the high style of French cuisine that is alive in Le Coucou's menu. The restaurant is the product of chef Daniel Rose, who is from Chicago but made a name for himself in Paris with his restaurant Spring. Everything on the menu looked amazing to me and also pretty costly. In fact, the night before was when I booked my flight to Austria for my vacation, so I was feeling a bit of a pinch on my wallet. Next, I looked over Le Coucou's beverage list, which had an impressive selection of wine, but what really caught my eye were the lambic beers the restaurant offered. Lambics are pretty interesting beverages. A lambic is basically a beer brewed with spontaneous fermentation, which can yield some fascinating flavors. The lambics on Le Coucou's menu are not the easiest to acquire and subsequently had pretty high prices, like $265 for a bottle. Yeah, that was a bit out of my price range. Instead, I went with a glass of the 2020 Leon Breyer Riesling from Alsace, France. In fact, the winery is one of the oldest in the region, dating back to 1580. My wine was pleasant. It was very drinkable with a bit of minerality to it and paired very nicely with most of the food that I had that evening. Before I was presented with my first course, I was given a bread basket with 2 different types of bread and a bit of butter. One of the breads was your standard sourdough offering, which was very good. It had a nice crust and texture. I can also say the same for the other slice, which was sort of a seaweed bread, I believe. In fact, I enjoyed the seaweed bread a bit more because it was just a little more interesting and unique. Regarding the butter, it was nice and smooth and of great quality, plus it paired very well with both of the slices. It wasn't long, however, until I was presented with my first course of the evening, the Canal de Boucher sauce américaine. The dish contained a pike mousse and lobster sauce. I knew even before coming to Le Coucou that I'd be ordering that course for two reasons. The first being that it's a dish that is rarely seen in New York, and the second reason was, quite simply, it sounded delicious. My anticipation to try the Canal was high and it didn't disappoint. The course was magical. It was perfection on a plate. When each bite hit my palate, it felt like an angel was wrapping her arms around me, holding me in the most heavenly embrace. To put it frankly, that dish made me so happy. It was a reminder of why I at times can spend so much money for food that would hardly fill me up, jump through ridiculous hoops to eat at certain restaurants, and spend countless hours researching and trying to find the next spot to dine at. That Canal was everything that I love about food. The pike mousse was texturally perfect. It was so soft and delicate, but had the most spectacular flavor that was enhanced by the luscious sauce américaine, which is essentially a lobster bisque. Overall, I thought that the Canal de Boucher was perfect and one of the best dishes I had so far this year. It was now time, however, for the main course, and once again, I was blown away. I went with the filet de boeuf with a sauce Chateaubriand served tableside. In addition to the beef was a marrowbone. Plus I was served sort of as a side, a pomme puree noir et blanc. The dish as a whole was beautiful. The steak was split down the middle and served in two halves, which showcased the perfect medium rare cook on the meat. The beef on its own was spectacular. It had a lot of flavor, which was amplified by the amazing seasoning blend topping the cut. The steak even had a mild sear, which contributed even more flavor and a bit of textural variation. But it was the addition of the Chateaubriand sauce and the bone marrow which made the dish special. The sauce was delicious and perfectly balanced, making it the ideal complement to the beef. I love bone marrow, but combining it with the sauce and steak made for some truly outstanding bites. The bone marrow was just so soft and luscious. Now, when it comes to steak for me, as long as it's a good cut of meat and it's cooked and seasoned properly, I really don't need any sauce or other topping, but Le Coucou's filet de boeuf worked perfectly. Although I wish that it were larger since it was so damn good, but at the same time I realized that I was in a fine dining restaurant and I wasn't going to get the type of portions that I'm used to receiving at your typical steakhouse. Fortunately, the side of the pomme puree helped a bit when it came to filling me up. The potatoes were silky, smooth, texturally perfect, and very rich. They truly were an ideal side to the steak. To put it simply, I loved the pomme puree. Overall, my main course was spectacular. Now, I really struggled deciding on what to order for my entree because all the mains sounded fantastic, but I ultimately went with the filet de boeuf since it's a dish not on the restaurant's lunch menu, and I thought that I should take advantage of the fact that I managed to score a more difficult to attain dinner reservation. I think I made a great choice. Transitioning to dessert, one of the servers even placed a new cloth over my table to hide the little bits of food that stuck to the tablecloth. Service at Le Coucou is truly top-notch. Taking a look at the dessert menu, there were some nice sounding options along with a selection of cheese. I decided on ordering the Gâteau au fromage Coucou, which is basically a cheesecake. However, the restaurant generously gave me an additional dessert, which I believe was the vacheron au midi. The dessert is like a pavlova. It contained a blueberry yogurt sorbet, violet cream, and meringue. I decided to eat that dish first since I didn't want the sorbet to melt. It was spectacular and a textural delight. There was the crisp meringue shell, the smooth violet cream, and the cool sorbet, which all combined for a top-notch dessert. All of the flavors were perfectly balanced. It was a flawless dish. I was so happy, and I still had my slice of cheesecake to try. The cheesecake was on the simple side, but it was very good. Although I do have to say that I felt that the vacheron was much better. Now, like I said, I did enjoy the cheesecake, but it just didn't have that wow factor like some of the other dishes I had that evening. The texture of the cake was delightfully soft, but I kind of would have liked a bit of a crispier or firmer texture at the base. Accompanying the cheesecake were wild strawberries, rhubarb, and vanilla, which were nice components, although I do wish that those elements had slightly stronger flavors. Overall, I liked the cheesecake, but I was very grateful to the restaurant for giving me that other dessert, which I loved. To finish things up, I was presented with a pair of petit fours and some warm, fresh-baked madeleines. Those madeleines were amazing. If the restaurant opened a stand and just sold those madeleines, they would have lines around the block. They were incredible. I also really enjoyed both of the other petit fours. It truly was a fantastic ending to a great and memorable meal. After finishing, it was time for the bill, which totaled to $161.14, but with my tip, I spent about $192, which was expensive, but it was also one of the best meals I had so far this year.
Simply put, my dinner at Le Coucou was absolutely spectacular. I just loved every single aspect of it. When I think of the best meals I've had so far this year, per se easily takes the top spot, but for number 2, I'm thinking that might belong to Le Coucou. But it's a close call because I also really enjoyed my birthday meal at Coucou. All rankings aside, I just think Le Coucou is such a fantastic restaurant on every single level. The food was excellent, the service was excellent, the decor was excellent. Really, all around, the restaurant deserves top marks. However, I really regret not getting an additional course because I certainly had the stomach space for it. I was trying to save money, but there was a point during my meal when I was having my appetizer and I was loving it so much. I was so enraptured by the flavor that I wanted to call my server over and tell her to take my wallet, to take all my money, and just have the restaurant feed me. All I wanted was just more of that delicious food. It was so good. So yeah, if you can't tell, I really like the restaurant. Now, it was pretty expensive, but it provided some of the food moments that I live for, and to me, it was worth it. But still, it's not the kind of place that I can go to every day. It's still a special occasion type of restaurant. However, I will certainly be going back to Le Coucou because it is a fantastic establishment and without a doubt, one of the best French restaurants in New York City.